Save your worlds.
No, God! No, God, please, no! 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 No!
How's it going, YouTube? Welcome to the first installment of a brand new series on the channel in Hot Take Thursday. I will be your host, Optima. For this series, we'll be attempting to have some fun as we do some detailed breakdowns and dissecting of hot takes, either provided by you, the community, or myself. And yeah, just have fun and try to foster some healthy meta discussions. And this idea just came to me as I was having a conversation with some prominent figures in the Legends of Runeterra community, where our opinions all varied on a pretty interesting topic. And yeah, I just thought, hey, since our opinions are actually so different on this, let's bring it into video form and try to have a little bit more fun with it. I think it's a creative idea, and I hope you guys do as well. So if you sounds like a video you'll enjoy, please consider sticking around and also partake in the discussion by just leaving a comment in the comment section below on your opinion of today's video. It would mean a lot to me because yeah, it's a discussion series, so without you guys talking, there's no discussion to be had. And also you can support this series further with a like and subscribing to the channel so you don't miss out on future Hot Take Thursdays. But nevertheless, thank you for watching. That is always greatly appreciated. Let's get today's video rolling because I could not be more excited to get this started. So today's video is going to be on this card in Legends of Runeterra in Fiora. Before we get too deep on explaining, discussing, and talking about Fiora in Legends of Runeterra, I just want to do a brief breakdown of my history with trading card games. I started with Pokemon, but never really got too into the competitive scene for Pokemon. I got really into Yu-Gi-Oh! And even Duel Masters, not really as known in these Western countries like here in America, but a very fun game in its own right. And I got really into them, so I have a lot of history with these card games, considering how much I got into those. It took me a very long time before I played any other card game after falling out with both of those two. Eventually got back into Yu-Gi-Oh! And then just it didn't have that same appeal, especially with how money hungry Duel Links is. So I was looking for a card game to play. I had accidentally downloaded Legends of Runeterra when I was trying to download League of Legends to play with a friend. And yeah, I never deleted it, finally gave it a chance. And now the rest is history as I'm now making content on it. So shout out to Riot and the dev team behind this who has done a fantastic job of making this an enjoyable, fun, and just a game that gets you so immersed into the universe that these characters inhabit. So shout out to everyone involved in Legends of Runeterra. You all have done an amazing job, even if we complain and have our gripes with things you guys have done. Overall, it's been spectacular to say the least. But I've been playing since about early October, and that was around when like the fleeting Hush situation and Make It Rain and stuff like that was getting nerfed. So I've been playing for around 5 months, going on 6. So I feel like I have enough of a fleshed out opinion to provide my perspective on what's healthy and unhealthy for Legends of Runeterra at this point. And I think a card that I'm still seeing go under discussed, even though some people do definitely voice their opinion on it, is Fiora. This card needs to be discussed more. And the reason I feel the most that it needs to be discussed is because since I first started playing, since day one of me playing, this card just felt awful to play against. Awful. Since then, no changes, nothing done to it. Continues to feel awful. And the more cards that we get introduced into the regions it works best in, such as like Ionia and then its own region in Demacia, the worse it's going to feel to play against. So I'm just really frustrated with with this card, and I think it's time we start discussing it more. And I hope you guys can join me for that and see if I can bring you guys to my side of Fiora is the most toxic card in Legends of Runeterra. So let's first start with that. The word toxic. What do I mean when I say toxic? Because I feel like that is a word that obviously in the gaming universe has a completely different meaning than what it actually means in the regular dictionary. But nevertheless, I feel like even that meaning gets completely shoved to, oh, if something's toxic in a game, it's hard to deal with, or it's just frustrating, or it's this and that. Yes, definitely frustrating, and yes, it also needs to be good in order to be toxic. I don't think anything that's toxic is like super bad. I don't know if those have ever went together. But those aren't the only two things, because if that was it, then obviously the most toxic card would be either Twisted Fate or Aphelios, because those are easily the most broken cards in the game right now and have been for a little bit now, since we've been missing out on a consistent patch that we should have got. But hey, yeah, it would be those. But Fiora is toxic for completely other reasons, and I'm going to dive into those reasons as we divulge through this video. So let's get to those reasons. So let's go over and look at Fiora first. So Fiora is a card that costs only 3 mana, that has Challenger, and once it's killed 2 enemies, it levels up. So I already have some qualms with this, as that all sounds really good, but it really doesn't get bad until you see this right here: win the game once you've killed 4 enemies. So once you kill 2 more, you will win this game with the card you are able to play on turn 3. That is not good. And when you factor in she also has a really strong champ spell, it all just starts to make sense as to why this card has never really struggled to find viability, no matter where the meta has shifted with Legends of Runeterra. And I know this is a game that's still in its kind of early lifespan as far as how long it's been around. So that's where I like to give a lot of the benefit of doubt to the Legends of Runeterra team as far as why Fiora hasn't really had any changes done to her. But at the same time, if you're going to be making nerfs and balances and doing all that, I think it's just an oversight for this card to continually go unchecked when it feels as bad as it does. I can literally see someone playing their first game of Legends of Runeterra, queuing into a Fiora, having no clue what is actually really happening, and then never touching the game again because of how poorly, just how awful this card feels to play against. And even when you win, it feels bad to play against. I give the devs a little bit of a break with the Aphelios and with TF, because one, Aphelios is a newer champion that they wanted to make sure was actually good, and they did that. They attempted to nerf it, but it just wasn't substantial enough, so hopefully we can see something else happen. But it's still a newer concept, so I give them a little bit of a pass with that. And then Twisted Fate, definitely believe this card should have been checked prior to where we are right now, but nevertheless, a lot of the newer cards we had introduced, such as Ballistic Bot with Victor, such as Burblefish, such as Stress Testing, a lot of those cards are what pushed TF over the mountain when it comes to being overpowered. It was never overpowered before that, in my opinion. A very good champion still, but never felt overpowered until all those other cards came out that allowed it to reach this level. Fiora has always felt bad to play against and has always been really good. That's never been an issue, and once again, the more cards we get introduced, the more that this will be true and more glaring to the everyday Legends of Runeterra player. So let's start with my first issue that I have with Fiora, aside from the fact that nothing's been done with its design since the game's been made. My first issue is going to be this number right here, which is the mana cost to get it on the field. It is only 3. When you think about turn 3 in a Legends of Runeterra game, there's plenty of states where you just get a bad hand and you haven't even put a unit down by turn 3. One card that you can compare Fiora to a lot, because it seems to practically have a win the game effect, is going to be the Watcher that you get with Lysandra, because obliterating the deck, if your opponent can't like put a champion back into the deck, you pretty much win the game. It's nearly a win the game effect. However, the Watcher pretty much will never get down before turn 8. Turn 8 is quite late into a Legends of Runeterra game. It's not the end-all be-all, but it is late into a Legends of Runeterra game. You have plenty of time to disrupt your opponent's board state to avoid the Watcher from coming down turn 8, namely doing something to Lysandra, since the Watcher is completely dependent on Lysandra to get first in your hand. The thing about Fiora is that there's no dependency on anything else other than hoping that you have a good hand to keep Fiora protected. There's no other dependency in order to help this card win the game. And that's an issue, because this card takes till turn 8 to get on the field and still is relying on other things to even be available turn 8 and to be 0 turn 8, whereas Fiora is relying on nothing, comes down turn 3, and then you just gotta pray that your opponent doesn't have every single bit of boost or barrier or whatever to allow it to survive attacks and also kill your units to eventually win the game. So the 3 mana cost is an issue. If you're going to have a win the game effect, Fiora should have been a much more expensive big unit that is forced to work in a much different way. I get it. You wanted Fiora and Shin to be an archetype and you wanted them to work together, so Fiora not being a low unit wouldn't have made sense. But now that we've seen it enough, we realize how unfair it is that this card's constantly getting barrier, and then we're trying to do something to the barrier, and then they just give it another boost. It just doesn't feel good. And once again, even if you stop it from getting to 4, you're just on your toes praying that they don't have that last card to make this card survive, and it just feels so bad. So bad, so frustrating. And it doesn't feel like you're getting outplayed or outskilled at all. I've never once felt like I got outskilled by a Fiora player, other than when they weren't using Fiora. It always just feels like, oh, they had freeze, oh, they had this. That doesn't feel like they're using any skill or real thinking power to get themselves in that position. It generally feels like, hey, did they high roll on their hand? Did they get a good enough hand? Did I get a bad enough hand for them to win? It doesn't feel like a lot of skills involved in these Fiora matchups, which is also the inherent issue with this whole situation. But namely, what we're focused on right now is just the 3 mana cost. So that's going to be my first issue with Fiora, is that she is too cheap for how centralizing she is when it comes to the game. Everything gets focused on Fiora once she gets on the field, and with her only costing 3, that completely changes the flow of the game. And that's going to be my second issue with Fiora, is that a card that inherently wins off of bashing into units and killing them and surviving is just kind of generally unhealthy no matter what, but it would be a lot better off if it was later in the game. The reason it's generally unhealthy is because what you're doing is you're forcing a player to now not feel comfortable putting almost any unit on the field, because any of them could end up getting bashed into by Fiora and end up putting them in a position where they win the game, considering with barrier you take no damage, with freeze you take no damage. There's some options as to how you can ensure Fiora attacks into a unit that's stronger than her, but she still doesn't die and is able to avoid leaving the field. It's just not a fun situation when you're just on the back foot because your opponent was able to turn 3 Fiora even though you have 3 units on the field. It just always feels awkward and weird. And yeah, then you support it with cards like Riven Shaper that are just always getting you more and more spells to allow Fiora to play. Support her with cards like Brightsteel Protector, which are giving her barrier aside from just Shin, and then also the spell denial that Ionia provides. It just all turns into a pretty toxic situation, and is very reminiscent of how Lee Sin kind of felt prior to his patch. Even still feels that way, more so in tournaments, as he's kind of matchup dependent now, so people kind of keep him to tournaments, but still how Lee Sin felt when he was feeling very oppressive himself. Because he's another unit that can just deal so much damage through combat that he kind of wins the game in a similar way to Fiora, very much so. And yeah, lots of similarities there, and why both of those cards have just kind of felt very frustrating, annoying, and bad to play against at times. And to hit even home more with my point of new cards just make this worse, we got a really cool card in Golden Aegis that we would hope would work really cool with Jarvis and Garen, 2 cards that want to be attacking and also would love barrier. But all this card seems to have turned into is the most perfect card to push Fiora into a new level of toxicity and more frustration, because barrier with the card that wins through attacking is so broken. It is inherently bad, and there's only so few cards that delete text in the game that it's hard to expect every deck to have adequate answers for a unit that keeps getting barrier and wins through having it and killing units. It's just not healthy. So yeah, my last thing as far as what the issue with Fiora is just the fact that she has a win the game effect in the first place. I feel like in card games, win the game effects are extremely delicate. When it comes to allowing a card to have this, they generally need to be kind of bad. And I think they should be a secondary thing in my personal opinion. If you want to give a card to win the game effect, the way, in my opinion, you could change Fiora is you make it to where she bashes into 8 units. Just a number I'm throwing out there. I'm not entirely certain on that. But she bashes into 8 units and she wins the game. But for every unit that she does bash into or attack into and kill, she gets to damage the Nexus 3 or 4, some number that's pretty reasonable each time. This would make it to where she's still accomplishing a lot, but at least doesn't win the game off of this effect, but would still be a pretty good card, I feel like, in my mind. So just something to consider for Riot, as that sounds like a better way to go about a win the game effect. Hey, your win the game effect is there and it's obtainable, but it's difficult, but you're still doing a lot by damaging the Nexus for each unit that is destroyed. I just think it could be something that's a lot cooler than, and definitely a lot less frustrating to play against than this current design that we currently have to stare at. And a game I like to compare it to is Yu-Gi-Oh! Yu-Gi-Oh! In its early days was known to have a ton of cards that were poorly designed and either had to be limited or completely banned, such as Monster Reborn, such as Regeki, and such as cards like Pot of Greed. Nevertheless, though, one thing I feel like Yu-Gi-Oh! Didn't get completely wrong were those win the game effect cards. Yes, Exodia did have to be limited because if you just allowed too many pieces of Exodia, it was a little easy to draw all those pieces. But once Exodia, the Forbidden One, got limited in how many cards you could run in the deck, it felt pretty hard to actually draw all pieces of Exodia. Furthermore, Destiny Board was another early win the game effect, and this is a card that is a trap, that starts as a trap card that then gives you the rest of the word final and wins you the game as you get a spell each turn. But if any one of those spells are destroyed, then final is entirely wiped and you no longer have to worry about final win of the game. Was extremely hard to accomplish, definitely able to be done, but very hard to accomplish. It never felt that unfair. And the last one is Final Countdown, which was pretty much never playable because 20 turns is so many turns and you have to pay 2,000 life points so that you win the game in 20 turns, and that just never felt like you would accomplish that in a time frame that actually worked for your typical Yu-Gi-Oh! Duel. So that card pretty much never actually saw too much play. So those are the 3 early Yu-Gi-Oh! Win the game effects. Not one of those seems as bad to me as Fiora, like at all. And that's just where I'm growing more frustrated with the fact that not enough people are talking about how bad this actually feels. I love the idea of an archetype being viable for the entirety of Legends of Runeterra. That's actually extremely good and cool for the game. But when it comes from an inherent toxic card that's just poorly designed and we just grown to live with it, it's not actually as cool as one would think, or cool at all. And I think it's something that hopefully we can just get off of. Let's take a gander at a game that I played recently where I went against a Fiora deck. So here's a game that I played earlier today where I played against a Fiora Braum deck. So this is pretty much mono Fiora, but they added Braum just so the deck isn't so one-dimensional, because pretty much Braum is the only thing that's caused Fiora, the mono Fiora is one of the only things that's caused Fiora overall as a champion to kind of fall a little lower in win rate, because the mono Fiora is a little too one-dimensional. So I see why this guy added Braum to it. Just allows somewhat of a backup plan that isn't just Fiora. If they destroy the Fiora, I lose the game. But for the most part, this deck kind of still works that way. So here you're going to see me mulligan, and that doesn't go the way I was planning, especially after I draw into another Tress. So really doesn't go as I was planning. But here comes my turn 2. I go Curse Keeper, and then I will use the Ravenous Butcher into the Curse Keeper to get the Abomination. And I'm in an okay spot as I'm able to get 7 damage off on turn 2. And feeling alright, but know what's coming now, as you have a 63% chance to draw Fiora on turn 3 with a full mulligan if it's not in your original hand. So generally it feels like your opponent has it, because that's higher than 50%, so it should happen more often than not. My opponent is allowed to attack into the strongest unit because all it needs is a troll chant to be able to do that, and this is where the toxicity starts happening. I cannot stop this because using my Glimpse Beyond on that feels bad as early it is in the game, and especially obviously Fiora attacking into Curse Keeper and me using the Glimpse Beyond on that sounds better. This turn right here is where I feel the max toxicity of Fiora is shown. I, on any natural turn, could possibly glimpse beyond this and get another abomination and then attack. But because of the way Fiora works, I have to pass because of the worry that doing anything and then trying to attack with anything would just turn into more of a win for my opponent. Nevertheless, though, because of how beefy Thresh is, I'm able to get down Thresh after my skipped turn, knowing my opponent's probably going to attack into the Curse Keeper, considering he had to spend the 3 mana on getting down Scargrounds. So here my opponent takes a little bit of time to make their decision, and they take back their decision and get down another unit to go alongside Fiora before choosing to attack into my Curse Keeper. I saved my Glimpse Beyond for this exact moment so I could be getting a unit while Glimpse Beyonding. Nevertheless, though, my opponent has single combat, which is another card that just makes Fiora so annoying because it can overwrite anything you're doing to save your unit from having to attack into Fiora, because it will come, they'll just wait to use it afterwards, and it's a very cheap spell that is really strong. Just another card that makes Fiora feel very bad. Here though, I got so lucky that I drew into a Bastion, as Bastion is one of the best cards in the game against Fiora, because Fiora is very dependent on the unit that's attacking into her being able to interact with that unit, being able to single combat it, being able to freeze it, being able to troll chant it, being able to do stuff to it. In this situation, I'm able to, because Thresh has Challenger, I'm able to attack into the Fiora and give it spell shield through the Bastion, so that my opponent is in an awkward spot to figure out what exactly he can do, because if my opponent was to single combat and then do something else, it's just a lot of mana to spend to first get rid of the spell shield and then put Fiora in a good position. The one thing my opponent could have had here that would have still put me in a terrible spot is Barrier, but even with if it was Fiora's spell with Barrier that gives it +3, I would have been in a terrible spot here. So that's where I feel like you're still just hoping that your opponent doesn't have the best spell, because yeah, if my opponent would have had Fiora's spell that gives Barrier and +3, that would have put Fiora at 8. I would have still lost Thresh and been in a terrible spot, and I have no answers for stopping that at all. And then I guess I could have knocked out the Fiora after this turn, but with this, but I still got such a solid hand to even be in that position. Thankfully, my opponent doesn't have that card, is forced to single combat and not even interact with the Thresh, and we're actually in a really solid position because of this. And that's with getting the best possible card in my deck, as this deck only has 1 Bastion, so getting this was extremely key. Now I got a Thresh that's almost leveled behind Spell Shield, and my opponent has lost their Fiora. So I'm in a pretty strong spot. And in a deck like this that is so focused on having Fiora in a strong spot, my opponent is going to decide to do something that's not too expected if you played against Fiora a lot. They're going to surrender that early on, and that's where the toxicity once again is displayed of this card, to where my opponent felt the need to forfeit that early into the game because I was able to fort their Fiora strategies that quick. That's not healthy. We should not have a card that's an end-all be-all. Did Fiora work? Nope, I forfeit. Like, what? That is so bad, and that is so dumb. I just can't wait to see, hopefully more people talk about this after we witness stuff like this time and time and time again. In Masters right now, Fiora has a 56.7 win rate alongside Shin. It's just behind TF Fizz, which people have not stopped complaining about at all. Every day there's a new tweet about how stupid this deck is, but not this one. That's just a point behind it. And then if you want to go all ranks, rather than just Masters, Fiora Shin's actually #1 on the top as the highest win rate for decks right now at 58%. And that's even worse because it shows that new players or lower skill players have no idea how to adequately deal with this strategy, because once again it goes against all the traditional ways that a Legends of Runeterra game plays out. You generally don't have to avoid playing units against anything but Fiora. Yes, Tahm Kench as well, but not in the same way, and definitely not to the point where your opponent wins off of just taking your cards with Tahm Kench. It's just not the same, and it shows how like this can ruin new players' experiences, and I just don't want to see that. That's my take on this card. If you guys feel different, I completely get it, but so far this is where I've been led to with Fiora, where nothing about it makes that much sense to me. And once again, the more cards we get in Demacia, we got so few cards in the streaming expansion for Ionia. Once we get more Ionia cards, especially ones that actually do things with combat, she's just going to continue to feel worse and worse, and further optimize the level of toxicity that she brings into the game. I've seen quite a few people say their opinions on why they dislike Fiora, but it's just nowhere near to the other cards that I see get hated on. And I hope you guys can be a little, if you're complaining about a card, can be a little bit more vocal about Fiora, because I do think that this is and will continue to be one of the most unhealthy cards in Legends of Runeterra. And for a game that I enjoy and care about this much, I would love to see something done about it. Nevertheless, that is going to be the end of my Fiora rants and why I think it is the most toxic card in Legends of Runeterra. Agree or disagree, feel free to leave your opinion in the comment section below. Once again, my name is Optima. I love this game, and if you also love it, then I love you as well. Thanks for tuning in. Definitely feel free to leave a like, to subscribe, whatever jazz you want to do, feel free to do it. I appreciate you watching, and I'll see you in the next Hot Take Thursday. For now, it's time for me to sip my coffee and get the heck out of here. You guys have a good one.